Selene Gallio is a fictional character, a comic book supervillainess from the Marvel Comics universe. She is a mutant, and an enemy of the X-Men, often associated with the Hellfire Club's inner circle. Publication history: Selene first appeared in New Mutants Volume 1, Number 9, written by Chris Claremont and illustrated by Sal Buscema. Fictional character biography: her long life is attributed to the fact that she is a psychic vampire, able to drain lives of others in order to extend her own. Her name derives from the ancient lunar deity Selene, daughter of the Titans Hyperion and Thua. Claiming to have already been old when mankind was just emerging, Selene was born 17,000 years ago. Her tribe's elders recognized her for what she was and commanded the entire tribe, including her own mother, to sacrifice their lives to feed her. Hyborian age equals, Selene was revealed to have been an old enemy of the sorcerer Kulan Gath. Kulan Gath was active during the Hyborian age and is known to have faced both Conan the Barbarian and Red Sonja. In fact, Sonja reportedly managed to kill him, and his spirit would not manifest again until the modern era. Thus, Selene was active at least as early as the Hyborian age. Rome and Eliphas Selene came to reside in Rome during the height of its empire. She approached Eliphas, a well-respected senator whose wife had left him for a general named Macias. Selene offered him immortality in exchange for helping her kill and absorb every soul in Rome. Eliphas went about drawing pentagrams and performing rituals at several locations in the city, but warned a small girl to get her family out. The girl's father alerted the authorities, and Eliphas and Selene were captured before the spell could be carried out. Just before they were burned at the stake, Selene killed the guards. She then cursed Eliphas for his perceived betrayal with an eternal life of torture, transforming him into a vampire-like creature. Eliphas was buried alive for 700 years until a farmer discovered him in his field. Nova Roma in relatively recent times, Selene was trapped for centuries in the Amazon in the Romanesque town of Nova Roma. She was worshipped as a goddess and worked to maintain the isolation of the town so she could maintain control. Eliphas, having at some point in time changed his name to Eli Bard, finally locates Selene in Nova Roma, where she is worshipped as a god. Still in love with her despite her curse, Bard realizes that he must make an offering to her before he approaches her. She also was able to marry several times and have descendants, including Amaralakala. Her most recent known husband was Marcus Domitius Gallio, a senator of Nova Roma. In Nova Roma, Selene attempted to kill Amaralakala. She knocked Amara into a lava pool, thereby releasing her latent mutant powers, as Magma. Selene fought and defeated Magma, and plotted to turn Danielle Moonstar into a psychic vampire like herself and conquer the world. Selene fought the New Mutants, and was cast into lava and buried alive. Becoming the Black Queen Selene directed her worshippers to undertake tasks that eventually allowed her to leave Nova Roma. Selene made her way to New York City, where she encountered Juggernaut at a bar. Selene planned to seduce and murder him, but was prevented from doing this when Wolverine manipulated a barroom brawl between Juggernaut and Colossus. Selene then discovered the existence of Rachel Summers, who Selene sought to turn into her slave only to be defeated by the X-Men. Prior to the X-Men saving her, Selene had tracked Rachel down to the home of a young man named Nicholas Damiano who had let the homeless Rachel spend the night at his place. Selene savagely murdered the young man, resulting in Rachel swearing revenge against Selene. With help from one of her worshippers, Friedrich von Ruham, Selene made contact with the Hellfire Club and forced the group to take her on as the new Black Queen. Selene became critical in the X-Men's attempt to stop Kulan Gath, after he conquered New York City with a reality-altering spell, though she ultimately attempted to double-cross the X-Men in order to steal Gath's talisman of power. Selene's time with the Hellfire Club was a turbulent time, due to her contempt for Sebastian Shaw and her quite open desire to rule the Hellfire Club as its sole leader. This led Shaw and Emma Frost to conspire to kill Selene by manipulating and training the young mutant Firestar to assassinate her, though this failed when Firestar realized what they were planning. Selene and the Hellfire Club's relationship with the X-Men came to a head with Rachel Summers making an unauthorized assassination attempt on Selene. Wolverine felt honor-bound to prevent Rachel from becoming a murderer, and so, saved Selene's life by severely injuring Summers. However, Selene was enraged, and used the incident to force the Lords Cardinal to agree to hunt and kill Rachel. A battle over this issue immediately commenced between the X-Men and Lords Cardinal, but it was unexpectedly halted when it drew the attention of Nimrod, the Super Sentinel who had murdered Selene's assistant Roma, and who was bent on killing the X-Men and the Lords Cardinal. The Lords Cardinal and the X-Men hastily agreed to a truce, fighting well enough to cause Nimrod to flee. After this battle, in the pages of New Mutants, much was made about Selene having secret plans involving Nova Roma and Magma. Due to her love for Empath, Magma left the New Mutants to join the Hellions, only to be called home by her father to enter into an arranged marriage with a resident there. However, Magma's escort back home to Nova Roma was Empath, who ultimately decided to stay in the city with her. The two became lovers and ultimately Magma was freed from her arranged marriage plans so that she could be with him. Writer changes in the book's transition into X-Force caused the storyline to be aborted. Furthermore, it was revealed in New Warriors number 31, via Empath, that Nova Roma was nothing more than an elaborate lie, concocted by Selene several decades prior. In a desperate bid to relive happier days in which she lived in ancient Rome, Selene arranged for hundreds of people to be kidnapped and taken to the jungles of the Amazon, to a city constructed per her designs. There she was somehow able to utterly brainwash her prisoners to believe themselves descendants of ancient Roman living in the Amazon. Magma was one of these kidnapped and brainwashed souls according to Empath. The city was disbanded and the residents returned to their regular lives across the globe. Years later, due to Chris Claremont wishing to undo writer Fabian Niciez's dismantling of the concept of Nova Roma, Claremont ignored said story and wrote Magma as she had been originally written. He later had Magma make cryptic references to having been manipulated into believing Nova Roma was a lie by parties unknown that sought to hurt Magma by taking away her childhood home. Furthermore, the 5-issue miniseries New Mutants Forever revealed that Claremont originally planned on revealing Magma to be Selene's granddaughter. This family connection would be stated as well in New Mutants V3 number 6-8, which had Selene resurrect Magma's teammate Cypher to try to kill Magma. Furthermore, it was strongly implied during Necrosha that Sebastian Shaw and Emma Frost mainly altered the Empath-Magma relationship in order to get Empath inside Nova Roma. In the event that Selene struck first and eliminated both, Empath would then use his powers to dismantle the city via convincing the residents that their lives were lies concocted by Selene. Selene ultimately was the deciding vote to vote Sebastian Shaw out of the Hellfire Club, when tension between Shaw and the newly recruited White King Magneto came to blows. Unknown to Magneto or Emma Frost, however, Selene had decided that she no longer had any need for the club and began plotting its destruction. Gathering an army of young mutants with help from the mutant omnipath the Gomes Master, known as the Upstarts. Under her authority, the Upstarts engaged in a killing spree that led to many presumed deaths, mortal injuries, and outright deaths. Selene manipulated her young followers with the promise of a game, where each murder committed would land them points that would ultimately lead to them being granted a prize, described as being the next best thing to immortality by the Game Master. However, with another writer change, Selene's involvement with the Upstarts was cut short as she herself was betrayed by Trevor Fitzroy. Selene was kept in a torture device that repeatedly ripped her flesh from her body. She would be freed by Amanda Sefton, though the torture left her weak and scarred. Needing to replenish her power, Selene first attacked and killed the other surviving externals. Though she was opposed by X-Force, she managed to complete the slaughter and knock out the mutants, until Cable arrived. Selene's attempt to absorb Cable's life backfired when she touched his techno-organic arm and she was forced to flee to maintain her power. Shortly afterwards, she tried to access the power of a mystical convergence using a rune staff made from the roots of Yggdrasil, the Norse world tree. She came to the Exploding Colossal Man Festival in New Mexico, but was again opposed by X-Force, who managed to wrest the rune staff away from her and destroy the colossal man mannequin it activated. Selene missed her opportunity for ultimate power and vowed vengeance on X-Force. She next appeared back in Brazil, where she had tracked Sunspot, along with deviants posing as SHIELD agents. She lured Sunspot to her defense, and offered him a position of power in the Hellfire Club, which he refused, regardless of the illusions with which she tempted him. However, Sunspot went along with Selene to stop the deviants in the Damocles Foundation from activating a celestial gatherer. Selene herself was attacked by the Sword Strike team, but she managed to cast a spell that devolved them back to lizards. Along with the rest of X-Force, Selene was able to usurp control of the machinery that activated the gatherer, but Moonstar and Arcadia destroyed the celestial artifact before Selene could access its power. Selene then returned to her post as the Black Queen of the Hellfire Club, after striking a deal with the demon Blackheart and seemingly throwing out the rest of the inner circle. She offered Sunspot the position of Black Rook, which he initially refused but then accepted when Selene and Blackheart revealed that his doing so would allow them to resurrect the spirit of Juliana Sandoval, the girl who died saving Sunspot's life when he first joined the New Mutants. Sunspot had no choice to accept and become Selene's proto-copyright Gar copyright. However, with Sebastian Shaw's return to the Hellfire Club, Selene was somehow trapped inside the catacombs under the club. However, she gained limited mobility from an alliance with Donald Pierce. When the X-Men, including Rachel Summers, arrived, during a membership change in the Hellfire Club, Selene plotted to use Rachel to completely free herself. She followed Rachel to Hong Kong via a transport portal and saved her from being corrupted by a telepathic agent of Courtney Ross, who was trying to become the next White Queen. This move was only a prelude to Selene taking over Rachel's mind, but Marvel Girl was too strong for Selene and expelled her, keeping Selene trapped for a time beneath the Hellfire Club headquarters. After M-Day, Selene was one of the few mutants to retain her powers after the events of M-Day. Selene, disguised as an old woman, befriends Wither and they live together in Mutant Town. She encourages him to use his powers and not be afraid of his natural gifts. She then asks him if he would use his powers to save his or her life. She had been killing a large number of people by draining their life forces, and during her last feeding her disguise was spotted by a witness. She reveals to Wither that Laurie has died, while he was away. Later she is attacked by the police and managed to kill 2 of them before being shot multiple times. Wither arrives and kills the other 2 officers, only for Selene to drop her disguise, telling him she is immortal and that they are 2 of a kind and should be together. She tells Wither that she will be his queen if he agrees, then kisses him, and he consents. Eli Bard's offering Selene's relationship with Eli Bard is explained by Warpath to the other members of X-Force. It is revealed he had originally planned to sacrifice the Purifiers to Selene but changed his plans upon seeing Bastion reprogram an offspring of Magus. Using the Technic transmode virus he reanimated the corpses in the burial grounds of the Apache tribe that he had decimated decades earlier along with Caliban. He presented them to Selene for the purpose of finding other dead mutants and resurrecting them by the same means, so that Bard can sacrifice them and their powers to her. Necrosha 1 week before the event of Necrosha, Selene has the recently resurrected Destiny brought before her where she asks what her future holds. Selene returns to the place of her birth in Central Europe, accompanied by new inner circle, consisting of Blink, Senyaka, Mortis, Wither, and Eli Bard. She sets her plan into motion of becoming a goddess with her inner circle. They go to the New York branch of the Hellfire Club, where they slaughter everyone present. Selene then targets others who she feels have obstructed, or otherwise failed, her in her quest for divinity, namely Sebastian Shaw, Donald Pierce, Emma Frost, the X-Men, and Magma. Caliban and Thunderbird then lead her to the ruins of Genosha. Selene dubs the ruins Necrosha and swears that her journey will end here. While most of the resurrected mutants attack the X-Men and Utopia, Selene is seen with Eli Bard resurrecting the massacred residents of Genosha, with Cerebro detecting the rise of mutant numbers in millions. There is a major problem though, a lot of the deceased have been depowered, despite having been killed before M-Day. Wither and Mortis explain what happened and the Coven begins to set up base at Necrosha. It turns out that Selene can't do the ritual yet, because Eli Bard lost the knife that was required to do it. She then dispatches her crew and they end up taking the knife back, capturing Warpath in the process. Once Bard gives Selene the knife and proclaims his eternal love for her, Selene stabs Eli, killing him. Warpath is eventually rescued by the Vanisher, but Selene absorbs the many cells around her, turning light blue and growing in size. She finally becomes the goddess she had sought to be for so long. Turning to her followers, she commands them to get her more souls. Warpath was able to destroy Selene by plunging his dagger into her chest, after teaching X-Force the Ghost Dance, a ritual meant to kill evil spirits such as Selene. Shocked that her moment of godhood was taken away so quickly, Selene explodes into rays of light. Sometime after Selene's death, Blink attempted to resurrect the Black Queen. Blink was eventually stopped by Emma Frost and a small team of X-Men along with former Sorcerer Supreme Doctor Strange, who managed successfully to purge Blink of Selene's corrupted influence. Return equals. It was later revealed that Selene's body and soul had been preserved as airborne particles and somehow stored in stasis in a vault located somewhere in New York City. Lady Deathstrike and the Enchantress gained access to the vault, and through the newly enhanced magic granted to her by the sentient virus, RK, she was able to fully restore Selene to physical life for the purpose of adding her to the newly formed Sisterhood of Mutants. Powers and abilities. Selene is both a mutant and a powerful sorceress. She possesses a wide range of superhuman abilities, but it has never been clearly defined which of these are her actual mutant abilities and which are skills derived from magic or other sources. Selene is a psychic vampire with the ability to sustain herself by psionically draining the life force of other human beings into herself. If she drains a person's entire life force, the victim dies and crumbles to dust in seconds. If Selene only drains the victim's life force partially, she achieves a measure of psychic control over her victim's mind, thereby subverting them to her will. Through unknown means, Selene can also cause a human being to become a psychic vampire like herself, but be subordinate to Selene's own will. Selene's youthful appearance and vitality depends upon her absorbing the life forces of one or more people on a regular basis. This restores Selene to a youthful and healthy appearance when she had been injured, or when she overexerts her other powers, and sustains her centuries-long life. A side effect of this process is that Selene remembers the life of anyone she absorbs. By using the absorbed life energies that sustain her, Selene can enhance her physical strength, speed, stamina, agility, reflexes, and durability to superhuman levels. The amount of energy she has retained from her victims does seem to correlate somewhat with her physical strength and resistance to injury. Selene can momentarily move at superhuman speeds of around 175 miles per hour, though this requires a heavy expenditure of energy and can cause her to age rapidly and require more life energy immediately. It is not known how often Selene must drain a human's life force in order to survive. Great expenditure of power causes Selene to age rapidly, but she can rejuvenate herself by absorbing more life force. Selene appears to be immune to most forms of conventional injury. She has survived both a knife wound and a crossbow bolt to her heart with no apparent lasting effects. While not indestructible, she once survived and recovered completely from molecular discorporation, though it took considerable time to reconstitute herself. Selene's most direct weapon is the telekinetic power to animate and/or levitate inorganic matter on a molecular level, by projecting part of her absorbed life force into it. She can affect nearly anything within her line of sight, and can warp and alter the molecules of inanimate matter to her whim, causing objects to wrap around and constrict others, creating lifelike humanoid structures to combat her opponents, or simply reducing objects to dust. She can use this power in more standard ways, such as creating powerful force fields around herself, and can levitate herself and others but cannot truly fly. Selene can also control and manipulate fire in a variety of ways, though she cannot create the fire herself. Whether this is a facet of her telekinesis or a separate power is unclear. Selene's telekinetic powers fail to affect beings who can control themselves down to the molecular level, such as the robot Nimrod. Selene possesses an undefined level of telepathic ability, though she is not as powerful as high-order telepaths such as Professor X, Emma Frost, or Jean Grey, and is vulnerable to psionic attack should she be directly engaged. Selene has used her abilities to scan minds for information and was able to communicate mentally within a limited radius. However, it appears that she lacks the telepathic strength to communicate over long distances, as she once used Rachel Gray in order to do so. She often uses her telepathy to blend her psychic signature into the background thoughts around her, making her difficult for other psionics to locate or track, or to induce a hypnotic trance in others, during which she slips away at superhuman speed, leaving them with the impression that she's simply vanished. Selene is able to temporarily assume the appearance of others. Like many of her other abilities, it is unknown if this is achieved through magic, telepathy, or other means. Selene possesses considerable magical abilities and extensive knowledge of sorcery, enabling her to cast and counteract spells. While the full extent of Selene's magical skill is not known, her greatly extended lifespan has given her sufficient knowledge and experience to be considered a threat to Kulan-Gath. She was able to cast an illusion sufficient to fool Kulan-Gath at his most powerful. Selene was revealed as one of several magic users with the potential to be the next Sorcerer Supreme after Doctor Strange by the Eye of Agamotto. Selene was briefly depicted as a being of semi-substantial living darkness with the ability to appear and disappear at will and, similar to Blackheart, imprison people in the dark energy she appears to be composed of. In more recent appearances, however, she has apparently regained her humanoid form and displays her original powers. In other media. Television Selene appears in the Wolverine and the X-Men's episode Shades of Grey, voiced by April Stewart. She appears as a member of the inner circle of the Hellfire Club. In the episode Foresight PT-1, she and the Hellfire Club end up fighting Cyclops in order to prevent him from disrupting a ritual that would transfer the Phoenix Force from Jean Grey to the Stepford Cuckoos. She uses her psychic vampirism on Cyclops, but displays none of her other powers in her brief appearance. Film Writer Kevin Greviour stated that the character of Selene in the 2003 movie Underworld is loosely based on Marvel Comics' Selene. Video games Selene appears as the final boss of Gambit's stage in the 1992 video game, Spider-Man X-Men, Arcade's Revenge. She also appears as a boss in the SNES game Wolverine, Adamantium Rage. In X-Men Legends 2, Rise of Apocalypse, Selene is one of the many characters to make a cameo. She is a captive in Apocalypse's citadel, and the X-Men free her as part of a deal they made with Sebastian Shaw earlier in the game. Selene promises to give them information, but upon being freed reveals she had no information, and had only said that so the X-Men would help her. Selene appears in Marvel, Avengers Alliance. References. External links, Selene at Marvel.com, Selene at the appendix to the Handbook of the Marvel Universe, Selene at the Comic Book DB, Selene, the High Priestess, Selene, La Belle Dame Sans Merci at UncannyX-Men.net.